Hello and welcome to the NevilleResearch.com video. So before we start, please click like on this video and subscribe to the channel so you can stay updated on all of the research I'll be presenting going forward. And today I want to talk about one of the realities we're dealing with, and that is the horror show, the absolute horror show that has been Shakespeare authorship research over the past 150 years. And I'm talking about, of course, both sides of this debate. So it's time to stop the horror show, and I want to outline here sort of some guidelines for doing Shakespeare authorship research. And like I said, it applies to both sides of the debate because both sides have just been engaged in the worst type of scholarship, the worst type of argumentation, and just it's like a never-ending cycle of bad and wrong, and it's time for it to stop. So the most important point I want to make here to get started is that nothing is new. In 150 years of the Shakespeare authorship debate, almost nothing is new. People are making the same arguments. The apologists have the same apologetics arguments. The same arguments are made against Shakespeare's authorship, and very little new has been developed in 150 years. So if you go back to the 19th century books on the subject, the same arguments are recycled today on both sides. So there's this idea that authorship is an ongoing debate and people should be debating it with each other and going round and round in circles on this stuff, and that's wrong. Okay? The apologetics arguments, there's nothing new, and the arguments against Shakespeare, there's nothing new. And the fact is the debate ended in 1909 when this signature was discovered. So there's only 6 known signatures of William Shakespeare, and 2 of them are from his will, or I guess 3 of them are from his will, and it could be that he had some disability at the end of his life. They're very poorly written, but it could be due to disability. And there's 2 signatures from 1613, and those are sort of written in a small space. The other people who signed it were able to sign their names. He wasn't able to sign his name, but that is another situation where there's some excuse for his signature. But in 1909, this signature was discovered on a deposition. There was plenty of space for him to write his name. There certainly was no evidence of disability at that time. But in 1612, no reason to believe he had any disability. He just couldn't write his last name. So I have a whole video on this, and you can check that out. But there's no question Shakespeare did not write 36 plays and 3 books of poetry. He didn't have those skills. He didn't have the education. He didn't have the interests. Nothing about it fits. So the debate has ended in 1909. If people want to continue to believe that Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare, it's fine, but there's really no point in debating it at this point. So it's time to move on, and And what do we have to move on with? We have to move on with real research. And real research, the only question is who wrote the works of Shakespeare? Now, some people on the authorship side think that we have many candidates we should be looking at, and we need to examine each candidate carefully and determine whether they might be the candidate and sort of celebrate the diversity of research, but that doesn't work. That's a failure. The wrong candidate is wrong. Okay? So Christopher Marlowe, he died in 1593. So he couldn't have written the works of Shakespeare. And he didn't rise from the dead. And even if his death was faked, which there's very little reason to believe it was, it still doesn't mean he wrote the works of Shakespeare, because whoever wrote the works of Shakespeare was still writing into 1610, 1611 time frame. Okay, so it's ridiculous. Christopher Marlowe did not write the works of Shakespeare. And the Earl of Oxford died in 1604. There's no evidence he wrote the works of Shakespeare to begin with, but he died too early. He couldn't have. So it's simple. He didn't. It's wrong. It's not correct. He didn't write the works of Shakespeare. So people can research candidates, and that's a great idea, and come up with what they can find, but there's a time limit to this. If you can't find good evidence after 10 years or 20 years or 100 years, it's time to give up on that candidate. So if we're going to move forward with Shakespeare authorship research, if we're going to actually make progress, the wrong candidates need to be discarded as wrong. It was a nice idea, but it didn't work out. Francis Bacon, of course, was one of the first authorship candidates. A tremendous amount of work was done on him. Books were written, but really no evidence was found that he wrote the works of Shakespeare. There are some similarities between Francis Bacon's sort of education or interests and the works of Shakespeare, but there's no evidence that he's the one who wrote them. And so he has actually been discarded by most people as a candidate, and it's time to discard all the candidates that are wrong. So the question is, how can we tell if a candidate is correct? And this is the basic principle. The correct candidate must fit everything. Every aspect of a candidate's life must fit the works of Shakespeare. The timing must fit, the interests must fit, the source materials must fit, the people surrounding the works of Shakespeare must fit, everything must fit. So in 1593, whoever wrote the works of Shakespeare dedicated the Venus and Adonis to the Earl of Southampton. So whoever wrote the works of Shakespeare must have had a motivation for doing that. Okay? It's just a basic thing. Around 1610, 1611, whoever wrote the works of Shakespeare must have had some connection to the Virginia Company, or must have had some connection to someone who was connected to the Virginia Company. It's just a fact. So that's got to fit. In 1599, whoever wrote the works of Shakespeare was somehow pro-Essex. Okay, Henry V has some pro-Essex content in it. It's just indisputable. So there's got to be that political leaning in whoever wrote the works of Shakespeare. Whoever wrote the works of Shakespeare was interested in Italy. For whatever reason, they could read Italian. They were interested in Italian literature. They were interested in Italy as a country, and especially in Venice. So that's got to fit. Okay? So that person also was interested in classical literature, Roman history, Greek history, classical writers. So all these things have to fit. The works of Shakespeare have lots of hunting and hawking metaphors and scenes, and a lot of scenes set in forests and a lot of knowledge of forestry. So whoever wrote the books of Shakespeare has got to fit that too. And the timeline's got to fit. So whoever wrote the works of Shakespeare in 1591 must have been a mature adult, ready to write mature plays, and that person must have maintained that maturity and ability for 20 years. So every single aspect's got to fit, and if it doesn't fit, your candidate is wrong. And that's the most basic issue. And that's the reason why we need to reject William Shakespeare as a candidate, because he doesn't fit almost anything except his, of course, connection with the acting company. That's a fit. His lifespan is a fit, but the rest doesn't fit. We need to find a candidate who fits everything, every aspect. Now, the most important point, and this is where Shakespeare authorship research by doubters has gone off the rails, is that authorship research is historical research. So any authorship research you're doing should be of interest to historians. Anything you're doing, any research you're doing into documents, into history, should be relevant and interesting to historians of the period, because you should be finding facts. investigating facts, interpreting facts. Now, when you're going where things have gone off the rails, is people have been pushing wrong candidates. So if you have wrong candidate, you can't just base your research on facts because the facts don't fit. So you have to either rewrite history or do silly interpretations of texts. All that stuff's got to go. The only thing that matters is facts. Actual historical facts, actual documents, actual research. And so that is how authorship research has to change. It has to become historical research. And if that's going on, then we will be able to eventually solve the Shakespeare authorship question. Now, there is a great misunderstanding about the authorship debate. It's not a debate. So there's not a two sides where one side makes an argument and the other side makes an argument and then somebody decides who's right. It's not a situation where one side makes an argument and it compels the belief of someone else. This whole model is wrong. Research is a process. Authorship research is a process. It's an ongoing thing, and it should be, if it's good, if you're on the right track, one person's research will build on the research of people who came before. So you're getting somehow closer to the correct historical understanding. And it's not about taking some sort of slice in time and saying, okay, today, who's right, whose argument is better. It doesn't matter. We're trying to investigate the past. What people believe about the past is really irrelevant. Okay? So the whole concept of a debate or of somehow some sort of trial, law court thing, all this stuff's got to go. People need to be focusing on research, actual research into who wrote the works of Shakespeare. Once again, related, it's not a religion. So it's not like there's a bunch of people with different beliefs and we need to respect those beliefs because they're heartfelt beliefs. It's not like I wrote this book so you now must believe what I think. It doesn't work like that. We're not different sects of different religions. Research matters, facts matters, the rest is nonsense. Now, obviously I'm a Neville researcher, and I'm telling you Neville research is different because we are looking at facts, we are looking at documents, we are looking at somebody who actually aligns with the works of Shakespeare, with the timeline, with the interests, with the source books, everything. The people involved, Ben Jonson, the Herbert brothers, Earl of Southampton, Virginia Company, Essex, all of it. Everything fits perfectly in every way. Now, does that compel someone to believe that Henry Neville wrote the works of Shakespeare? Of course not. This isn't a religion. This isn't about converting people. This is about, and let's go back, historical research. So all that matters is historical research, and all that matters are facts. So on this YouTube channel, I'm focused on providing you with facts and evidence. I'm going to continue with that, but it's time to stop the horror show. It's time to stop the horror show. It's time to take a new direction in authorship research and to solve the Shakespeare authorship question, which needs a solution. Anyway, thank you for listening to this rant. Please click like and subscribe. Please tell your friends, and we'll keep on making good content for you to enjoy.